a lot of pressure. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
the pressure, as I understand, the
yeah.
pressure is reaching the highest echelons also of the government
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, हाँ जी,
on e-cigarettes.
बिल्कुल
So
बिल्कुल।
I think we need to be extremely watchful, all of us,
हम्म,
careful, and do whatever we all can do.
yeah. सर वो जो 95% वाली स्टडी थी ना, that has been debunked by the Lancet also, but still it is
Debunked
being
long back.
used. हाँ, but
Everything,
still,
everything that has been
हाँ,
debunked is being used by the
हाँ, हाँ।
industry. Yeah.
और ये तो हर जगह ही वो यूज करते हैं ना ये वाला एविडेंस तो, और इतनी बार जब बोलते हैं तो इट लुक्स लाइक ट्रूथ।
हाँ वो तो स्टैंडर्ड है ना गोबल्स का you
हाँ,
can repeat lie 100 times and that will
या
be
या
truth.
या so
Yeah.
that will be an issue, that will be an issue always actually.
Yeah.
They are always way ahead और बड़ा कन्विंसिंग तरीके से लिखते हैं जो भी लिखते हैं ना।
वो तो
हाँ,
they have expertise. I mean, they can hire
हाँ।
any expert they want. So
और सर आपको याद होगा ये जो डॉक्टर किरण है ना, he has been repeatedly writing such articles in papers in favor of electronic cigarettes. You might be remembering also.
also he's orthopedic surgeon, not nothing to
He is
do with the
orthopedic
public health.
surgeon. Yeah. And why does he have interest in electronic cigarette? I just fail to understand. He might find it good himself, but why should he convince others about its use? I don't know.
Dr. Sanchita, are we ready?
Ma'am.
So shall we start, because Dr. P.C. Gupta is here and the few participants have also joined.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please start.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to TOCO India TOCO, an online lecture series on tobacco control in India. My name is Sanchita Roy Pradhan. I, along with my colleague, Ms. Basha Pandey, will be your host for today's session. The topic of today's webinar is Progress in Tobacco Control, Some Roadblocks, and it is my honor to introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. P.C. Gupta sir, and he will be sharing his expertise with us. Please join me in giving the warmest of welcomes to our esteemed guest, a speaker who truly needs no introduction, and many of you may already be familiar with sir's remarkable achievements and contribution in the field of tobacco control. Dr. P.C. Gupta sir is the director of Haley's Shekarian Institute of Public Health since its foundation in 2004. He is also an adjunct professor at the Arnold School of Public Health, University of South Carolina, and a visiting scientist at the Harvard's T.A. Chan School of Public Health, and the visiting scientist at the International Agency for Research on Cancer, France. Dr. Gupta was previously a senior research scientist at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research and an honorary consultant at the Tata Memorial Center, Mumbai. Dr. Gupta is the president of the Action Council Against Tobacco and is on the advisory panel of numerous NGOs working on cancer and tobacco control. He has a Doctor in Science degree in epidemiology from Johns Hopkins University and a Master of Science in Statistics from the Mumbai University, India. I would like to request our respected director, Dr. Shalini Singh ma'am, to give her opening remarks. And I also like to inform all our attendees that we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please submit through the chat box. Ma'am.
Thank you, Sanchita, and a warm welcome to all the participants of this webinar series. And as Sanchita has already introduced Dr. P.C. Gupta, I'd like to once again thank sir for agreeing to give this, deliver this webinar at this important juncture where, you know, the various countries are battling against actually this dilemma whether e-cigarettes should be introduced or not introduced, or they should be regulated, and how they can be regulated, because tobacco is reinventing itself in new forms. Earlier, it was just the cigarettes, then the BDs, then smokeless tobacco, and now it's the e-cigarette and heated tobacco products and whatnot. And we do understand that there's a very, essential need to save our next generation from initiating this practice and this use of tobacco, because that's the only way forward. It's very difficult. People find it very difficult to quit. And these counseling sessions also take a very long time. And it needs a lot of motivation from the self as well. So while the government is catching up with new programs and new methods of tobacco cessation, it is very important to protect the youth from initiating it. So without much ado, I'll request Dr. P.C. Gupta to present a few of his thoughts and share with us his remarkable understanding of tobacco control. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shalini ji, and thank you NICPR and all the members for inviting me to give this particular talk. Of course, it's extremely close to my heart, and therefore I can speak a lot, and I have spoken already, and maybe some of you may find some repetition also, because been speaking about these issues for quite some time in different fora. So shall I share my screen?
Yes, sir.
So oh God. So the topic that is given to me is in progress in tobacco control, some roadblocks. So I will talk about the overall tobacco problem, how we have progressed in India in controlling that, in addressing that, and what have been the roadblocks and how we have overcome and we need to overcome in future. Now, just to start with a standard kind of burden, to understand the burden of tobacco, it's a huge burden. Tobacco is estimated to cause over 8 million deaths every year in the world, and that's the estimate from the World Health Organization. About 7 million of deaths are among the smokers, those who smoke themselves. But the worrying part is that 1.2 million deaths are among non-smokers. They don't smoke, but they die because there are others close to them who are smoking. And even more poignant worrying statistic is that 65,000 of these deaths are among children. Children who have nothing to do with smoke or smoking also die because they are getting exposed to smoke from smokers. And these global estimates are basically for cigarette smoking, because most parts of the world, tobacco use is synonymous with cigarette smoking. And research has been going on cigarette smoking for a long time. And we have most extensive data that are available on cigarette smoking. So most estimates really are for cigarette smoking. But in India, we know that tobacco is used in a wide variety of ways. In addition to cigarette smoking is there, very important, but in addition to that, BD smoking is very important, about twice as much as cigarette. And together they cause about 900,000 deaths every year in India as per the estimates. And even more than smoking, smokeless tobacco use is common in India. Use of tobacco in various form of without smoking it, putting it in the mouth. And that form of use is causing about 350,000 deaths every year. So if we try to estimate daily deaths, 3,500 persons die in India every day due to tobacco use in some form. And that's a statistic that is really quite alarming. And in addition to deaths, I think deaths are extremely important, of course, objective measure of the impact. But we also need to remember and appreciate that tobacco causes a spectrum of non-fatal diseases, which are as problematic for individuals is fatal diseases. And just to give an idea, there are cancers, and the list of cancers is not just lung and larynx and oral and esophagus, but the list of cancers that are caused by tobacco is increasing with every evaluation, because more and more evidence, more and more data comes. And I think by now there is a long list of cancers that are caused by tobacco, including the unexpected ones like acute myeloid leukemia. And the evidence for these is sufficient. And then other diseases, fatal diseases, are stroke, heart disease, and lung disease. Very important group of diseases caused by smoking, and that are completely fatal. But in addition to these fatal diseases, there are many non-fatal diseases which are extremely important for tobacco users. Just to give, and we don't think much about it. We don't even know much about that. Just to give an example, eyes. Now, we as humans, we have, of course, every part of our body, every organ is extremely important. But when it is asked which part of the body, which organ is most important, to which you put most value, it is the answer generally is eyes. Those is shown in surveys. And tobacco affect our eyes. It causes macular degeneration, causes blindness and cataract. So this is something that is affecting the most valuable organ of our body when even when we are alive. Then it causes peripheral vascular disease that results in amputation of extremities. Now one may live with that, but what kind of a life is there when the extremities are amputated? And it's not a small problem, because the surgeons personally have told from rural areas that they have to ampute more persons because of BD smoking and tobacco rather than because of accident. So this is an extremely important problem caused by tobacco. Then there are gender-related problems. Among men, a very important problem is impotence. That is caused by erectile dysfunction, low sperm count, low sperm mobility. And this is to contrast with the fact that, for men, having a macho image is the most important part, of most men's life. And tobacco is affecting that. Among women, a very, very significant, important part of women's life is reproduction. And tobacco affects reproductive health in a very adverse way. It causes low birth weight, it causes low birth weight and low gestational age and stillbirths with very high risk and probability. So tobacco causes these kind of health effects in various ways. And similarly, secondhand smoke and even smokeless tobacco causes a spectrum of health problem, and therefore we need to really address and control this issue of tobacco if we want to control these diseases. Now, whenever in public health we talk and think of controlling diseases, we only think in terms of resources, financial resources, manpower resources, the infrastructure available, the capacity available, and things like that. Even in any forum, the first reaction that is that we should do awareness and we should do education. And that's important, of course, awareness and education are important. But in addition, there are many other evidence-based and proven strategies for reducing tobacco use in the population. And we need to adopt those strategies. But if we want to adopt those strategies, any advancement in any tobacco control strategy is vehemently opposed by the tobacco industry. And tobacco industry, as we all know, is a very rich industry. It's a very powerful industry and very resourceful industry. So when they oppose something, they oppose it with all their might, with all the resources available to them and all possible forums, not just in terms of media, in terms of going through social groups, but also lobbying with the government and lobbying with the policymakers, lobbying with the policy implementers. They do all kinds of strategies for opposing any tobacco control measure. So the progress in tobacco control has been very difficult, not only in India, everywhere, and much more so in India. And just to look at the history, by 1960s, it was quite proven very clearly, especially with the first Surgeon General's report, that smoking causes death by cancer, heart disease, etc. But industry didn't accept that. That is still, it kept on questioning the evidence. And finally, when they could no longer oppose it, they could not deny the evidence, they started printing mildest possible warning on cigarette packets in USA. Smoking may be injurious to health. And contrast with the kind of warnings that are given on other consumer products, even if they are, very mild. For example, even on coffee cups, the warning is there. Please be careful. The content may be hot. Or on any electrical appliances, please don't open it. You may get a shock. Or won't put it in the water. You may get a shock. So for every consumer product, the manufacturers are required to, and they do put warning on the use of the product that it can cause this kind of harm, any improper use. Whereas tobacco causes death and disease when it is used exactly in the way that is instructed by manufacturer. But even then, they don't want to, and they have not informed, they still don't want to inform consumers fully of the problems or the issues with using their product. In India, the printing of any warning, it started only in 1975 with the first act on cigarettes. Very mild warning. Again, smoking may be injurious to health. And then slowly the text warnings got stronger and stronger. Tobacco kills, tobacco causes cancer, etc. And in early 2000, there was a negotiations on framework convention on tobacco control, in which India played a very important role in facilitating a strong FCTC. And India was one of the first country to ratify the sign and ratify the FCTC. And in FCTs, after that, most countries now have stronger pictorial warnings that are getting larger and larger and that are stronger than text warning. That has been shown by many, many research projects. Now, India has 85%, currently 85% pictorial warning on both sides of a pack of tobacco products. And some countries have even larger tobacco warning. So the progress is there now in the warning labels for tobacco products. But the goal now has gone further. It's no longer just warning label, but plain packaging. Plain packaging implies that the package of tobacco product should only have single sort of a dirty brown or dirty green color, which is non-attractive background color, only with the tobacco warning, and the font are printed on a specified font and specified size. So no other kind of claim or word should be there on entire tobacco package. And the battle for warning labels have been fought very, very vigorously, very strongly by the tobacco industry. And why we focus on industry fights so vigorously on the pack? Because industry considers pack as the most important vehicle of its advertisement. We now know through internal documents of the tobacco industry that for designing a new pack, the industry can spend millions of dollars, to make it attractive and appealing to its target population consumers, which are generally adolescents and children, of course. In India, now we have 85% warning, but we have to remember, and if we see the history, since India came out with CODPA and the first warning labels under CODPA, how difficult has it been to progress with all kinds of challenges and roadblocks by the industry, and ultimately court battles. And the warnings have come only after long and hard-fought court battles. And of course, the important point is that industry had a lot of money and a lot of lawyers and everything else. But those who are putting, we people, public health people and the government, they have science, they have evidence, and they have public health on their side, if not so much resources and money. Now, advertising. Advertising is extremely important for cigarettes. And if we go a little bit into history, what we find is that cigarette started getting manufactured in an industrial way with machines during late 19th century. And cigarette was the first non-essential consumer product that was being marketed. So far, until then, all products were those which were very useful that were marketed by the industry. So those products didn't require a great deal of advertising. They were required for people. But cigarettes were completely different. It smelled bad. If you use it, first thing it does is causes choking and coughing. And you have to bring a flame, an open flame, very close to face. And that's such a horrifying thing, especially in the very cold climate. And in fact, I read this, in fact, in a document from the tobacco industry, internal document. It was written by advertising manager of the tobacco industry that I'm supposed to advertise this product to people. What a hard job I have. But of course, they did their job very well. And therefore, the progress of entire craft of advertising is strongly linked with cigarette advertising, because cigarette was the only consumer product that needed to be advertised, and advertised quite well and strongly. Tobacco is addictive. We know that nicotine in tobacco is highly addictive. And cigarettes are especially designed to be highly addictive. That is something that we may not know, but it is known that cigarette is a highly engineered product. It's not simply tobacco flax or tobacco rolled in the paper. It's a highly engineered product that is meant and designed to be highly addictive. And industry always targets children and young adolescents because they found out that there's no point in targeting older persons. If they have not started using, they won't start using tobacco. It's only children and adolescents who start using tobacco. So that has been always their target population for advertising and marketing. Now, right from the beginning, people started using cigarettes, and because of the symptoms it causes, it got associated with ill health. So what industry did, industry associated cigarettes with health. In fact, now it is not there for a long time, but initially, if you see the advertisement till 1930s, 40s, and even I think until 1950s, you will see doctors, images of doctors and dentists advertising cigarette. And then it was no longer sort of acceptable, but they kept their advertising strongly linked with activities like sport, different kind of sports event, which give image of being very healthful and healthy activities. And same thing in India, not only in Western countries. We all many would remember the sponsorship of cricket matches, the most popular sport in the country, by cigarette brands. There used to be Wills Cup. And we have a research paper now even from India that as an effect of those who saw the Wills Cup, they were much more likely to smoke compared to those who didn't see that particular sports. So advertising did work even in India. At global level, Olympics and Formula One were very big vehicle for advertising of cigarettes and tobacco products. Smoke-free Olympics movement started in 1988 with Winter Olympics in Canada and progressed to tobacco-free Olympics in 2010 with a WHO agreement. But still it doesn't mean that there is no tobacco at all now in Olympics and in big sports event or formula racing. They somehow sneak in and they still manage to do some marketing and advertising using these vehicles. Even in Formula One racing, that was one of the last vehicle. It ended officially in 2010, but still they can put their logos and symbols at different places. So the restrictions and bans on advertising of tobacco products have been some of the most hard-fought battles with the industry, everywhere else and also in India. In India, ban on advertising of any tobacco product in any medium is in place because of COTPA, the passage of COTPA. But the industry is still circumventing that ban. And one of a common method we all very well aware of is the surrogate advertising. Advertising of a similar product without tobacco, with the same brand name, same imagery, same packaging as a tobacco product. And that we see it all the time. And in fact, the product that is advertised, we know that in the garb of pan masala and gutka, elaichi is getting advertised. They say that no, we are not advertising pan masala or gutka, we are advertising elaichi. And our very popular film stars and the sports stars are being used for this surrogate advertising, and their excuses that they are advertising elaichi, not a tobacco or product or pan masala. But interestingly, you can go and check with any pan bidi kiosk or any place whether they have that particular brand of elaichi. They may not have the brand of elaichi, they would certainly have that particular brand of pan masala and gutka they can provide. So one can imagine what is getting advertised through these kind of activities. And in recent years, after in fact COTPA advertising regulations were put, the medium that has become very popular, very common is OTT, internet and OTT over the top platforms, where now most of the films and videos, web series are getting released. And they are, until now, they were advertising, they are still advertising fully using all kinds of tactics on OTT platforms and internet. And the law allowed limited advertising at point of sales. But as one can see any point of sale, almost any point of sale, and we would see that industry has stretched the slight leeway given to POS and point of sale advertising is stretched to full extent, and they do all kinds of advertising at point of sales. So even in our studies and surveys, if we want, if you ask them, do you see tobacco advertising? And the answer is yes, of course, all the time we see tobacco advertising because so much of it is happening. Now I say OTT platform and public health people, and they have been raising a lot of concern on advertising of tobacco products on OTT platform. There is a strong demand to curtail on it, and this is a complete contrast to the regulations on films. It took a long time. I mean, that was quite an exercise to bring regulations for not advertising tobacco products in films, because there, of course, two ministries were involved, Information and Broadcasting and Health Ministry, and it was a battle, of course, with the industry as well as with the entire very powerful Bollywood film industry. It was a very long, hard-fought battle, but the regulations that came out were quite effective. India is the first country to bring out those kind of regulations that no smoking scenes can be there, and if they are there have to be editorial justification for them, or by the time, and as long as they are there on the screen, there has to be a warning that should be displayed, and before the movie and during the interval, an anti-tobacco spot advertisement needs to be shown. So all those rules are there, reasonably getting followed when we go to see the film. And one of the reasons for that is that the responsibility of violation is put on theater owners, not on the maker of the film or the director of the film or the actor. The responsibility is on the owners of the theater. Now, owner of the theater is renting his theater for showing the films. He has absolutely no interest whether film is making money or not. He is getting his rent. So since it is his responsibility and he cannot take the risk of getting his license being affected, so they make sure that these rules are followed while showing films, especially in the multiplexes and those theaters. But in OTT, no such regulations are there. But just the last week on May 31, the government has extended the regulations on tobacco advertising applicable to films to the OTT media as well. And it's just happened, on the 1st of June, just within a week and within a few days, the giants of OTT world are already huddling together. And yesterday itself and today itself, there is a news all over. They are going to challenge they are going to put a legal challenge against this notification. So the story is no different. Against any tobacco control, there are bound to be challenges, legal challenges, and it is going to be a hard-fought battle with the industry and with the vested interests. Similar issue was there with secondhand smoke. Exposure to secondhand smoke can cause serious diseases and death. And this is something that came out only in mid-1980s, this particular observation. In fact, there was a Japanese epidemiologist, Dr. Takeshi Hirayama, who was a good friend also, he's late now, he died. But he had a large cohort study in Japan. And he told me he was getting surprised looking at all the death rates. The death rates were higher among non-smoking women than among non-smoking men. He said, how can that happen? Why should non-smoking women should have higher death rates than non-smoking men? So he looked at his data more carefully. And when he separated women into groups that if they were non-smokers, but whether their husbands smoked or not, then he found out the reason for difference, that the excess deaths were among women whose husbands were smoking. So that was the kind of first observation on the effect of secondhand smoke. And the industry really pounced upon it, and let's say completely baseless kind of result and conclusion and all that. But slowly, many other results started coming out, and they were all supportive. And of course, there are many research papers that were non-supportive also. And when you analyze, people analyzed the papers that supported the health effects of secondhand smoke, and research papers that doubted the secondhand health effects of secondhand smoke. And it turns out that majority of the papers that did not support the health effects of secondhand smoke were in some way authors were connected with the tobacco industry. So the industry goes up to any extent, to this extent also, of influencing the research in their favor, and in favor of the policy that favors them, that is beneficial to them. But it's a common thing that smokers can expose themselves, but those who are non-smokers, they should not die, they should not suffer from other persons smoking. And we are, those who are, for us who are in the higher age group now, as seniors, we remember that, until about 3 decades back, even in an aeroplane ride, the person sitting next to you may be smoking. And afterwards, what they did, that they gave a concession that smokers, there was a smoking section and non-smoking section in the plane. So smokers would be seated in a smoking section. And this was really a very annoying kind of a system, because of course the smoke can percolate to entire this thing. And there were a lot of arguments, and one of the most powerful argument in this matter was that this was similar to reserving a peeing area in a corner of swimming pool. And if such a rule is there, it will be so repulsive, even though it was pointed out that pee is nowhere as toxic as secondhand smoke. Secondhand smoke contains toxic material. So there were petitions and personal representation from public health advocates to the International Civil Aviation Authority, and those kind of advocacy resulted in advice for banning smoking in aeroplanes from CAA. And now not only it is banned in most flights, but also in the terminals. So there one can, not in India, but other countries, you may hear announcement that you can now smoke only after you get out of the plane and out of the terminal building of the airport. So Indian law in general on banning smoking in public places is quite strong. The law bans smoking even in workplaces and semi-open places. And in fact, it bans smoking in all kinds of places. There were questions that how it cannot, there is no ban, there cannot be a ban on smoking in, for example, in private clubs. How can there be a ban? Those are not public places. So there was a debate, and ministry did come out with clarification that it is banned in all places, public places, where a person can enter as a matter of right or not. So even if it is a private place where some people can enter, some people are not allowed to enter, but that is also a place where smoking is not allowed. So those were the kind of clarification that made the Indian law on banning smoking in public places quite strong. It also included semi-open places, like bus stops, railway stations, stadia, where there is large crowd, and although it may not be fully closed. One weakness of the smoke-free places in India is allowance of designated smoking area in restaurants and airports. If restaurant has more than 30 seats, or in airport. And that's an eyesore. If you travel by air, and you come out and you see a smoking area, and you pass by that designated smoking area, you obviously get a lot of this whiff of tobacco smoke, which is very repulsive, especially for non-smokers. And even for smokers, even the smokers don't like, in our studies, even smokers don't like to go into places where others are smoking. They also, majority of them, less than non-smoker, but still a majority of quite a high percentage among them favor ban on smoking in public places. And those were the kind of research findings that helped in passing these laws and regulations of ban on smoking in public places. In fact, now we are going ahead from enclosed public places in many jurisdictions, especially in USA, and where we know a lot, but other places, other areas also, the smoking is getting banned even in gardens and on beaches. And one reason is that you collect, when they clean the gardens and beaches and these open areas, the largest part of the garbage that they collect, trash that they collect, are cigarette butts. And that's again is quite repulsive. We'll talk about it a little later also. Now, smoke-free homes is another development, because now if you have banned smoking in all public places, private workplaces also, then the place to let smoking is homes. And most exposure, lot of exposure now to secondhand smoke is occurring in home. So what we need is also smoke-free homes. And there is a movement, and a lot of homes are declaring now themselves smoke-free. And this has to keep on increasing. And this is cannot be by law. This is, of course, by voluntary action by the households. Now, for controlling tobacco, there have been many accomplishments so far. We already talked a lot about that. Development of Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, that is the first international treaty initiated by the World Health Organization. And as I say, World Health Organization need not initiate any treaty so far, because any strategy to control a disease, if it is opined by experts, there was no opposition to it. But tobacco was different issue. And second point, international treaty can be there if there are many nations that are affected by it, and it is not controllable only by an action of an individual jurisdiction or individual country. For tobacco, it got established that tobacco is getting promoted by transnational tobacco companies that are operating in many different countries. So even if one country does something, it is very difficult for other countries to do something, because the same company is operating in so many different countries and using all kinds of strategies for opposing tobacco control measures. So that's why this international law, international framework was needed. WHO proposed it. 180 or so countries negotiated. It took quite a bit of time. India was a participant in that negotiation and facilitated a great deal in making the FCTC stronger. And when it was accepted and passed, India was one of the first few countries to sign and ratify Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. And India had already implemented COTPA, which had incorporated many of the sections, many of the provisions that were there in the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. And the rules were notified after of course, COTPA was passed. And the important point is that in notification of rules, every subsequent notification was generally stronger and stricter than the earlier notification. So we have been progressing on tobacco control in that manner. In addition, there have been advisory to state governments, especially, for example, to school systems, not to associate with the industry for any kind of competition. Earlier because the tobacco industry also manufactures pens and pencils and notebooks, there were competitions in the name of those pens and notebooks. Or it's also advising now for vendor licensing, that the state governments should initiate vendor licensing. That has already been initiated in many states. It has also undertaken National Tobacco Control Program, and it has successfully contested and challenged almost all tobacco industry legal challenges so far. So we are the government, and we are doing quite reasonably well so far in terms of combating tobacco control. But this is just one department of the government, I mean health. There are many other departments which are intimately, deeply connected with tobacco. Just to give you a few examples, this is not exhaustive, but just to give an example, finance. And that is because of taxation, and taxation is supposed to be, is said to be, it is a evidence-based, most effective strategy for controlling tobacco. So we have tobacco taxes in India, but the taxation is uneven. It's not similar on different class, different kinds of tobacco product, and products are getting more and more affordable because incomes are rising and taxation, inflation is there, and taxes are not increasing in the same level. Industries, the job of the industry department is to encourage industry. So in that sense, in that way, they encourage tobacco industry. They give all facilities to tobacco industry also, which should not happen, because that is not the industry we want to encourage. Agriculture, extremely important, because that's, India is a large producer of tobacco, and reducing production of tobacco is extremely important. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Commerce, now trademarks, overlapping of tobacco products, trademarks with non-tobacco products, that is causing all this surrogate advertising, and that is of course in the different department of the government. Home department, very important for enforcement of law, especially at local level. Without, and we can have very good law, but unless it is enforced properly, we will not see the public health benefit of the law. Environment, this is comparatively less understood, so we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But before that, agriculture. For supply reduction, agriculture, reducing agriculture production is extremely important. We all understand that, that is no-brainer. It is especially important for India because India is one of the largest producer of tobacco, among top 3 for a long, long time. And it is so important that the World Health Organization declared the theme of 2023 World No Tobacco Day as Grow Food, Not Tobacco. And just as, but this was only on the 31st of May, the news came out on 1st June, and today is 6th June, and from 5th June yesterday, there has been news in newspaper that Federation of All India Farmers Association is opposing WHO and media, and it has started lobbying with the Prime Minister office to oppose the World Health Organization. The slogan, Grow Food, Not Tobacco. Now, talk a little bit about environmental effect. That was, I think, the WNTD theme last year. And tobacco affects environment in many, many different ways. I will very brief in it. There are fires that are caused by discarded tobacco butts that leads to loss of life, property, and forest. Forest fires are caused by cigarette butts, and household fires also. Half of the fires in which people have lost their lives were caused by discarded cigarette butts. BD butts, cigarette butts, and smokeless tobacco product packages, they are like toxic waste dumps because they still have a lot of tobacco residues left in them. Curing of tobacco leaves after it is harvested from field, it requires firewood, and that leads to deforestation because a lot of firewood is required. Minimum estimates are like 40 kilogram of wood for 1 kilogram of tobacco, and can go up to several hundred kilogram of wood for a kilogram of tobacco. So it requires a lot of wood, leading to deforestation. And the agriculture itself, tobacco agriculture causes far more depletion of soil nutrients because tobacco leaches nutrients from the soil. As a result, lot more fertilizers and pesticides need to be applied to tobacco crop, and excess of this goes and runoff, and the water reservoirs get affected. So these are some of the huge environmental effects that are caused by tobacco growing, tobacco production, and tobacco use. Okay, a little bit about Areca nut. I have very little time because any discussion of tobacco product, I think problem in India is incomplete without Areca nut, because Areca nut is so much strongly linked in India with tobacco, smokeless tobacco especially, and it can be used by itself, but it is linked with the smokeless tobacco. And like tobacco, Areca nut is also a class 1 carcinogen. So it is very important to think in terms of controlling Areca nut also. We didn't know actually much about Areca nut because that is not a topic that was that has been studied a lot independently. But the GATES 2 module included some questions on Areca nut that were administered to everybody. So we do have some information, and the report itself, GATES report, says that prevalence of betel quid without tobacco was 8.7%, Areca nut 8%, and pan masala without tobacco 4.8%. These cannot be aided because there can be common things between them. But I did some in-depth analysis, and it turns out that tobacco, Areca nut is used, of course, by tobacco users, and any kind of tobacco user, if we take, about 20% of tobacco users are using Areca nut along with tobacco. But those who are not using tobacco in any form, about 15% of them are still using just the Areca nut. And that's a very startling kind of statistic because it's a different structure also. You know, if you look at this age distribution of a smokeless tobacco use, it increases with age. But you look at the Areca nut use with age, it decreases with age. So what does it show? It shows that the increase in the Areca nut use may be a more recent phenomenon. We don't have consumption data on Areca nut much, but you look at the production data and the explosive way in which the production of Areca nut is going in India, and it is, I think, is still increasing, although it is stopped some 7-8 years back, this particular graph. So to conclude, in the population, about 11% use Areca nut product without using any tobacco. Prevalence of smokeless tobacco use plus Areca nut is 21.4 plus 11%. So 1/3 of the population using ST plus Areca nut. And the total number, if we take, is about 30 crores. But if we add smokers, the numbers becomes more than 40 crores. So if we think in terms of exposure to carcinogen that we need to control from public health point of view, we have 40 crores of population that is exposed. So the problem is bigger than it is thought so far. So we now understand tobacco control issues involved a little better than before. Progressed a lot in implementing policies to control tobacco, but still a lot more needs to be done. And to realize the public health benefit, we have to still wait. After doing all the tobacco control, it will still take quite a bit of time to realize the full benefits in terms of public health consequences. And we can't rest until tobacco is eliminated completely as a public health problem. So, sorry, I didn't get time to touch upon electronic cigarette, that particular aspect that was said earlier, but that's a new big challenge. Although legally it is already banned very exhaustively in India, but we are still finding a lot of lobbying on the government, a lot of pressure to change that law, and lot of marketing on the internet, and lot of exposure, especially of adolescents and children who are getting exposed and using these products in larger numbers. So I think we have to keep on working on many different fronts in tobacco control. So I think my time is now almost getting up, so I will stop now. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to respond to them. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful presentation. And we are truly grateful for the invaluable knowledge and wisdom you have shared with us. So, dear participants, we have now reached the question and answer section of today's webinar. But as we are running short of time, we may address 2 or 3 questions. So I'll start with, sir, there's a question, like how to tackle or deal with surrogate advertisement. Is there any amendment under CODPA?
In the new CODPA, I think I'm not quite sure, but there is some provision that might tackle the issue, but right now, I think it needs to be addressed through social pressure, to social media, because everybody who is advertising, doing this surrogate advertising, they are susceptible to social media, susceptible to social pressure. And we already have one example of one of our biggest star, Amitabh Bachchan. He stopped and he issued a public statement that he will not, after he did not know that this was pan masala or gutka that he was advertising, so he will not advertise it anymore. The advertisement still kept on coming because of old agreements, but at least that was possible through social pressure. So I think the social pressure right now, especially on celebrities, is an important tool in the hands of everybody who is on social media, and especially on youth, because youth are a lot on social media and they can exert a lot of pressure. And they are the target population for all this kind of advertisements. Thank you for the question.
So the next question is how to tackle the adverse effect of passive smoking on the non-smokers, despite of having laws as ban of smoking at workplaces and semi-open places.
Very good question. Excellent question. You know, until the law was not there, we were even afraid to say somebody in a restaurant or someplace, please do not smoke. He can simply come back to us and I'm smoking my cigarette. Who are you to tell me anything, and all that kind of arguments and quarrels can ensure. And of course, nobody wants to get into those kind of quarrels with anybody else. But after the passage of the law, we have a right. If somebody is smoking next to us, we have a right to tell that, please do not smoke here. It is against the law. It is written also, and not supposed to smoke. It causes this and this problems. And then most people will understand, because it is a law and you are telling it well to others, then they will understand. So the most important part is not to keep silent. Once you see that somebody is smoking and others are getting exposed to secondhand smoke, which is full of toxins and poisons, it is the duty to stop that, to at least warn the person, to caution the person to stop smoking in that place where others are nearby getting exposed to secondhand smoke. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, sir. The next question is consequences for violation of tobacco advertisement on OTT platforms in India.
Yeah, we know very well there are lots of studies that clearly show the depiction of smoking in the films and movies. They are an important risk factor for initiation and sustenance of smoking and tobacco use in the population. So that kind of scientific evidence is available. And with OTT platforms, it's even more important, because what happens is that things that are released to OTT platforms are directly entering into our living room. We don't have to go to cinema hall to see those. And so the whole family, including children, are exposed to that kind of imagery. So the exposure to smoking in OTT platform is even more worrisome than exposure to smoking in movies that we see in theater. And that is why there has been a lot of clamor, and many in the audience here have been very important proponent and vocal. They are demanding, very vocal and demanding that something, restrictions and bans should be placed on smoking and tobacco use imaginary in OTT platforms. And hopefully the regulations have been now declared. Of course, there might be legal battle and all that, but let's hope that it will work well in future.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the next question is from Dr. Prashant, sir. That, sir, can we say that age distribution of Erica nut and tobacco use complements each other in the way that younger people start with Erica nut and later switch to tobacco?
We don't have a very good cohort data on that, longitudinal data, but looking at the age distribution, yes, that is the kind of conclusion we can draw, that Areca nut is getting, since it is all the products are getting targeted to adolescents and young individuals, they start using Areca nut, and of course they can easily progress to smokeless tobacco products because they are all so much together. That would be a reasonable kind of deduction from the data that we have. Yes.
Thank
Thank you
so
for the
much,
question.
sir. Thank you so much, sir. With this, we have come to the end of our question and answer session. We greatly appreciate Dr. P.C. Gupta sir's time and expertise in addressing the question of our participants. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you find the webinar informative and helpful. Finally, I would like to inform you all that we will be sharing the information of our next webinar via email to all the participants registered with us. Once again, thank you for attending and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanchita, for conducting this session, and Dr. P.C. Gupta for entertaining all the questions so patiently. And I'm sure this interest in tobacco control is rising, and this shows that, you know, a lot of participants from various fields have been attending these sessions and these webinars. So in future also, we would like all of you to actually attend these sessions and also tell about this session to other people who might be interested in tobacco control, and continue to work hand in hand with organizations such as ICMR for tobacco control. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, and thank you all the attendees for attending this webinar. Namaskar.
Shalinji, thank you everybody for attending it.